to Leading for Life Stories Season 4. I'm Bob Judson. I'm the host for this podcast, and thank you very, very much indeed for joining me. Whether you're a new joiner or a seasoned listener, then I really, really hope you enjoy the mix of content that we provide. The personal stories, the thematic episodes, and of course, the fantastic guest interviews. If you've been with me since the beginning, then I'm enormously grateful for your loyalty and thank you so much. If you're relatively new to the show, then I really hope you like it and I hope you find all of it interesting and some of it hopefully useful to you. Please subscribe on whichever channel it is you're using, whether it's YouTube, whether it's a podcast platform. That really helps us boost the show and get it over the hills on the algorithms. So if you can do that for me, I would be enormously grateful. But without further ado, let's go. Welcome back, everyone. When I first connected with my guest this week, she basically got my attention with her immediate response to my connection request. Because my guest is Jo Living. Jo is the founder of a company called Aces High. And her message back to me after we connected was, I love doing podcasts. Poker in the workplace makes for an interesting topic. And that really grabbed my attention. And the rest of the podcast grabbed my attention as well when I interviewed Jo, because it's a fantastic conversation. She's an incredibly charismatic, very entrepreneurial, very gregarious individual. And she's doing something that is definitely, I guess, a bit left field for many, but is really, really interesting as a concept, because she's using poker as a leadership development tool. And you can see why when the explanation comes as to how it all works, when you think through the strategy and the approaches that you need to take. And she explains all that in much more detail than I'm going to here. But it's an absolutely captivating episode, and I think you'll find it a lot of fun. So off we go. Jo, I am so looking forward to what's going to be a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much for joining. You had me kind of immediately on the LinkedIn connection with the poker as a team building exercise, and we'll talk a lot more about that. But so delighted to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Not at all. I mean, just to sort of jump in with the broader piece that I always do. I mean, you've got a fascinating, very diverse career profile. Actually, we're going to come back and talk much more about what you're doing now in a while. But just to get us started and give the viewers and listeners a bit more about Jo Living, could you tell us your kind of story so far, as it were?
Absolutely. I guess my career journey started back when I graduated Cambridge in 2003 and entered the high stakes world of investment banking. So I started my career at UBS, right in the kind of firing line of investment banking and all of the intensity that brings with regard to kind of working hours and earning your stripes as a junior on the desk. And then was in banking for 10 years, more latterly at JP Morgan, before hitting 30, and I say kind of having my quarter life crisis, where I really started to introspect a little bit about what I wanted to bring to the world and what was fulfilling for me and where I wanted to kind of take the next phase of my career. And I guess on reflection, I'd always been the kid with the lemonade stand and the student with the side hustle. And I definitely had this entrepreneurial itch to scratch. So actually left with nothing lined up, but I needed that breathing space and looked at next steps. I started out actually as founding managing director of a new accelerator program where I was supporting other entrepreneurs. And that really gave me that exposure to kind of startup founders and ideas. And someone approached me with an idea around a femtech company, and invited me on board as I was kind of getting excited about their idea. They wanted a co-founder. So I subsequently set up Aura Fertility, which was a support app for women going through fertility treatment to access emotional support, fertility experts and treatment plans. And we were successful in raising venture capital funding for that and ultimately selling the IP to a pharmaceutical. So that was my first kind of big initiative into startups and entrepreneurship. And subsequently, I've been setting up Aces High, which we'll talk about as a team building experience that uses the poker table to tease out essential business skills around kind of negotiation, managing risk, and decision making in high stakes moments. And in parallel to that, I've been spending a lot of time helping Anglia Ruskin University and their students and graduates with startups and innovation. So I spend a lot of time paying it forward to the next generation of startup entrepreneurs as well. And that's taken me to where we are today.
That amazing. What a background. I mean, the Anglia Ruskin University thing piques interest with me as well because I literally have just the podcast that I've just published was with a lady called Emily Stone, who actually is a bright start at Deloitte, who is doing a apprentice degree as part of their program. So that scheme is you join straight from school into into Deloitte, which is obviously quite unusual. They normally take graduates and then do a degree, and that her degree is with Anglia Ruskin. So
Oh,
just
great.
yeah,
Yeah,
fascinating.
I mean, I was at the other Cambridge, right? So it's nice to kind of see what the other side looks like in terms of these really creative young people that are from a much more diverse socioeconomic background and haven't been necessarily grown up with sort of the opportunities around them, but they've got so much like natural kind of fire and creativity, and a lot of them want to be freelancers in photography as well as those high growth tech startups. So it's the whole spectrum.
Yeah, no, really interesting, isn't it? And I think, I mean, I was talking a speech relatively recently where I was talking about this, where I do think this whole there is a belief, isn't there, that people are often it is they've got this or they haven't got this skill, and they've developed this skill, and therefore they can build on these opportunities. I firmly believe that actually pretty much everybody, given the right opportunities and the right kind of enablement, has got the ability to really deliver amazing stuff. So being somebody that's helping them do that, power to you. That's fantastic. It's really good.
I really believe in when you're developing others. Like if you think that your child is underperforming in a certain area, maybe they need a tutor. But I'm a fan of giving them a tutor in something they're thriving in. So if you want someone to succeed, put the fish in water and put the monkey up the tree. Don't try and get the fish to climb the tree. So lean into natural abilities wherever people are at and nurture those more than something that they're underperforming in.
Yeah, great analogy. That's really, I love that. That's terrific. Wind the clock back a little bit before the Cambridge thing, though. I always tend to talk about early motivations. Just give us a bit of a sense of your kind of upbringing and your start, as it were, before you actually started in the world of work at all, and even going to university.
Yes, certainly. I grew up in Essex with two older brothers, which I think was quite formative. So always had this sense of needing to keep up with the boys and wanting to join in. And as the kind of youngest and the only female to really, be able to fight my corner. And they were playing tennis, I was ball girl. They were playing football, I was in goal. So had this wanting to join in with the boys. And I think that made me really ambitious, determined, resilient, and definitely able to succeed in a man's world. And that's sort of been a theme through my career, from banking to tech startups, the world of poker, obviously, and being able to pull up a seat at the table and handle myself in a room full of men. So that's been quite formative. I think also, I grew up around playing cards as hobbies and as their passion. Both my parents were bridge teachers. So I would spend weekends ordering the cards. I could shuffle age 6. I was performing card tricks and aunties and uncles age 7. And my dad in particular was a playing card expert, enthusiast and collector. So much so that Derren Brown sought him out to do a televised card trick on, because he was the leading card expert and card historian at the time in the UK. So I had this exposure. Interestingly, never to poker. Gambling was a dirty word in my house. My mother's first husband had bet their house on England winning the 1966 World Cup. He quite literally took the deposit for their first home and bet it on England. And I think when she found out, that really was game over. And gambling just wasn't a really thing I was surrounded by. So it's interesting that I came to poker at all, but definitely that kind of backdrop with playing cards, board games, strategy games, and that competitive element that drove me in kind of academia to start with, and then my career was a kind of consistent theme as well.
Yeah, betting the house on a football match. At least that they actually won it. So
I
okay.
know, but the danger there is that you kind of outcome bias, right? So we talk in ACES High about that, where you conflate the quality of the decision with the quality of the outcome. I mean, that's clearly a very poor decision with a lucky outcome.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's great. Well, let's take it to Aces High then, because as I mentioned in the intro, and I was captivated by your conversation really about using poker for leadership development and training. I think it's a fascinating concept. I mean, tell us more about what you're doing, how you got into it, what's the what you're aiming to achieve.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing to say is that everything we do at Aces High is always zero gambling and completely designed for beginners. So we take people that don't know the difference between a club and a spade, and we get them into their first competitive poker tournament, but with no gambling. So we're playing for champagne and chocolates and trophies and bragging rights. And we're firmly in that sort of team building fun. But our differentiator is that we're rooted in driving real business value. So in corporate offsites, away days, it could be Christmas socials, or summer parties, but very commonly in that kind of team development space, we're taking people through beginners poker in a kind of friendly, competitive environment and really creating quite an immersive experience that's artificially stressful. So whilst no money is at stake, you have the real adrenaline of sitting at a tournament grade poker table being dealt hands by people that have dealt at the World Series of Poker $20 million hands, and all eyes are on you and you have to make a decision. And so we use that as a lens to understand our attitude to risk, our attitude to conflict, our attitude to decision making, and how we show up under pressure. And I always say the poker table is a microcosm of that, of how we show up in the real world. And the real world is a place of imperfect information where you're having to make high stakes decisions. And so by understanding ourselves better, by learning to read the room, we can really discover and unpick a lot about our stress responses. So we look at self-regulation under pressure. So when you're having a stress response, how to counter that, as well as, reframing risk. So for example, if oftentimes in the corporate world, people think of risk as something to be eliminated or transferred or minimized, and oftentimes that's the right approach. But in our careers and in life, if you're not at least sometimes going out on a branch, then you're not going to get the best fruit, right? So if you're going for that job and you've got 8 out of 10 of the attributes, are you seeing that as an opportunity that you can go for? Or are you sort of counting yourself out? And being able to look at expected returns. There's so many analogies and so many things we draw out, but expected returns and being able to look at not if am I going to win this hand, but if I played this hand 100 times, would I be up more times than I would be down, so that you can be in the arena, take up a seat at the table and lean in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even more fascinated now. I mean, how does it work in terms? Are you bringing together formed teams, or collections of people that have never met each other before, or a mixture of both, or has it
So
work?
typically it's internal corporate teams on their away day or offsite. They've done a day and a half of strategic planning and now they want their half a day of organised fun. And that's our signature workshop that lasts about 3 to 4 hours. And that's our bread and butter. But quite surprisingly and very commonly, it works really well as for membership bodies. So we're seeing groups of whether it's some high net worths are coming together with their families to teach negotiation and resilience. We're also looking at, I did an event last week with lots of very successful startup founders that looking at the analogies around managing their runway and risk taking and negotiation in their startups, and they know each other a little bit. So we don't sell individual seats. We're a kind of high end premium corporate experience, but it works also very well for client events. So that's kind of an interesting angle.
Nice. And you mentioned the table and stuff. But do you take all the kit with you to go to the event then? Is that, or do they?
Absolutely. We're fully mobile. So we have tournament grade tables, dealers from the World Series, premium prizes, luxury chips, kit, cards, all of the kind of things you would need for an immersive poker experience. And again, designed for complete beginners with no gambling. So we take you right through that first kind of poker experience. And we kind of challenge people that consider themselves a bit more experienced in poker. So there's something for everyone. And it really is that sweet spot, I think, filling a gap in the market for team building fun that's rooted in business value. And it all came about for me. I'd been playing poker alongside my career. Back in 2016, I had had a holiday to Morocco. This is where it all sort of first started for me. I'd only been learning poker for about 6 months, but I was on holiday with my boyfriend and he had clocked an advert for a big international poker tournament and wasn't letting up. So reluctantly rolled off my hammock and back on the bus to Agadir. And I guess life deals you a hand that you don't always see coming, because 8 hours later at 4 in the morning, I'd beaten 200 men to win my first international poker tournament. So that was
Wow.
a lot of fun. That was where I got the bug. But where it sort of turned into something kind of more for the world of work was that my home games that I hosted, kind of small stakes, were very male dominated. So just wanting more women to join, I started teaching some brilliant women in my network and friends weekly beginner poker nights. And that's where I saw something really interesting. They were kind of organically reporting that they were better able to assert themselves and winning in client negotiations, and reflecting back to me that poker had helped them to assert boundaries and negotiate. And my friend Caroline said, after a particularly big client negotiation, I realized I had aces and there was no way I was folding. So that, in parallel with my own observations around, leaning in, and in my tech company at the time, I had landed venture capital investment. I'd negotiated the sale of the IP. I had to deal with, investors, clients, tech developers, the whole lot. And poker was seeping in there as well. So those two together really was the aha moment where I thought, I think there's something in this. With these poker lessons, we can take to the corporate world. And having straddled and having had that background in sometimes disappointing away days and offsites and leadership training, I thought this is a really fun, immersive, different way to build quite hard to teach corporate skills.
Yeah, I can totally see that, and I think, I mean, I share your view sometimes about the entertainment aspect of leadership away days and things like that, or just away days generally, because sometimes it is just pure entertainment as opposed to, and which can be quite good fun. I mean, I did a thing when I was still working at Deloitte. We did chocolate making, which was highly entertaining and quite tasty and rewarding when we got to take away the fruits of the labor. But at the same time, actually materially useful, not really at all. Whereas what you're doing, definitely, if you're bringing out some of those kind of lessons, I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely, always valuable to bring teams together, even just socially, right? But I think we're moving past the stage where you can put 2 grand behind the bar and just have a jolly, right? Because culture's changed in the world of work. And likewise, the chocolate making, the cocktail classes, they're fun, they have their place, and nothing wrong with those at all. But where you want sort of executive teams coming together, and you've had a rigorous offsite, and now you're looking at kind of leadership, we've actually innovated this psychometric profiling to get your poker personality animal. So you can find out, are you a falcon or a deer or a different meerkat type animal personality? And so you can start to look at not just building awareness around how you're showing up and making decisions, but understanding how you interrelate in the wider team as well. And so having that mix of fun. And I think gamification is really important, actually. It's the most memorable thing. And if people that have done MBAs look back and think, oh, what do you remember from your MBA experience? It's the friends they made, and they'll talk about that race car driving day or that experience. So I think for solidifying and cementing the learnings, it's super powerful, but let's make sure it kind of carries real value.
Yeah, the memorable aspect is very, very important. Interestingly, I remember when I was leaving the Air Force and I did a kind of mini MBA, if you like. It was a 3-week course at Manchester Business School. And the end of that, or near the end of that, we did a simulation which was all around manufacturing, and it was all about cash flow and teaching you about stuff. And that, classically, for someone coming from a military background, you've never done that. You run big budgets and things like that, but you don't have any sense of the kind of financial health management of an organization and keeping that all working. And they did it very, very cleverly with where you could buy more stuff to make more stuff, which was great. But then, of course, you potentially had to pay more rent, and you had and the whole cash flow bit came out really, really clearly. And I still
Yes.
remember the game from doing that. So I'm totally with you. I think it's
That's an area we'd love to get into, MBAs. It's not something we've had much traction with today. I need to do more outreach, but the corporates are loving it, and I think it could work brilliantly for MBAs as well. We're doing some graduate schemes. I think there's also scope to bring it as a recruitment tool, right? So an assessment center who is not winning at poker, but able to do the deep listening, the emotional intelligence, the empathy, the reading the room, the discipline, patience, statistics, and layer on that kind of strategic flair as well for some of the more investment type firms. Super fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. What do your parents think about what you're doing then if they were very anti-gambling? I mean, I know you're doing it zero gambling, but did they buy into
Well,
that?
they're very, very pro playing cards, but actually both my parents died quite young, so I haven't
Oh,
been
I'm
able to share
sorry.
this part of my life, which is really sad. But I know they'd be really proud. My dad, in particular, would probably be, yes, quite happy to see the kind of his passion for playing cards coming back around, which I would never would have predicted, 20 years
Yeah, I
ago.
apologize for the indelicate question. That's
No,
yeah,
not at
but
all.
no, I'm
Not
sure
at
they
all.
would be very proud of you. I mean, no question about that. If you're bringing that all into into the mix. Do you get any pushback though? I mean, I know you've been very clear. Right up front, you said there's zero gambling involved, et cetera, et cetera. Do you get any resistance from organizations though who feel that poker? Not really sure that's what we want, or is that a point you have to get over?
Not as much pushback as I expected going into it, to be fair. I thought people would be like, oh, we can't be seen to be associated with gambling. But I think people understand quite quickly, once they've checked, that this is inclusive and zero gambling. And I make a big point, actually, as a female founder, of really working hard to smash the stereotypes of bluff and bravado and boys' night. And so some of the pushback is from men worried that this will optically look like another boys' night activity because maybe last time they did race car driving and before that they did golf. But the reality is that, yeah, I'm able to kind of step outside of that. I think it helps actually being a female founder
Yeah.
in the space of kind of poker, straddling that. So we've hosted, corporates that are international law firms, global tech giants, media companies, Premier League, and like companies, so sporting bodies. So we haven't really had that much pushback. I think people really get it and understand the value and are keen to kind of see how it could play out for their teams.
No, yeah, totally. Fantastic. And in scale, I mean, you're growing, but are you predominantly UK at the moment, or do you go international, or
So happily, last week is a very timely question. Last week we hosted two events on the same evening, one in London and one in New York. So that was our first ever New York event, but it's absolutely on our radar to have geographical hubs and delivery partners that are in different regions. Had low disproportionate amount of inquiries from the US, which has really surprised me because that's quite well served in terms of poker knowledge and poker appetite. I think we're hitting a kind of inflection point in the UK where sort of Texas Hold'em is becoming more well known and more frequently played, but it's still, 8 out of 10 people that come to our events have never not properly picked up a hand, or maybe they played a few times at uni, and so it's becoming more accepted as a mainstream kind of pastime, but still that kind of hunger and curiosity and slight bit of poker sparkle around what it actually involves. So I think that's a neat timing for what is actually a very inclusive game, because you're not going on a physical hike or a scavenger hunt or you're building a raft. We're sat around the table, and we've had people with different needs being able to join in as well, which is really fun.
No, I can see the total inclusivity bit. Just for the uneducated, and I include myself in this, Texas Hold'em.
Yes.
Just break down the kind of different forms of poker a bit. It's probably worth an excursion.
Absolutely. Well, I think if you grew up in the UK like myself, certainly kind of in the 90s and before, the main cultural references that we saw on TV and in films around poker, they're actually not playing Texas Hold'em. They're playing a game of bluff and bravado called five card draw, which is basically I have five private cards and you have five private cards, and we're trying to bet aggressively to see who can bully the other one off. And so that's where the kind of reputation of bluff and bravado as for poker as a game comes from.
That's a kind of Casino Royale thing, is it?
Well, very interestingly, if you look at Ocean's 11, if you look at Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, if you look at Only Fools and Horses, all these brilliant poker scenes, they're playing five card draw. By the time you get to Casino Royale, which I think was 2007, it switched to Texas Hold'em. And
Oh,
that is a completely different game where you have two private cards and up to five face-up community cards, and you have to form the best five-card hand from the seven available. And what that does is it switches it, because there's so many face-up cards, it switches it from a game of bluff to a game of strategy and statistics. And so, what was, five card draw has gone round, carried on to Texas and evolved, and now come back round the globe as the world's most popular variant of poker. And so it is really interesting to see that evolution. But that is the game now that most people will refer to as poker, where you have two private cards and then rounds of betting and up to five community cards face up in the center of the table and betting as to who has the best five-card hand.
No, I consider myself much better educated. Thank you for that.
No
Do
problem.
you, I mean, do you get, you said obviously you'll take complete beginners. I mean, does that take, if you've got a limited period of time for your session, I'm guessing different people pick stuff up at different rates. Is that part of the challenge, that actually picking up the game versus actually people who are very familiar and already playing poker, perhaps, might make a difference in that, or how does that work?
We can do beginner tables and expert tables, but we like to mix people up because we see some are helping the others and people getting there quicker and having a little bit of kind of camaraderie and kind of support of others around the table. But what's really interesting to reflect on is how many people struggle with being completely new to a skill and possibly feeling out of their depth. And that is a point of reflection we lean into into the workshops, and say it's not often as an adult you learn a completely new skill, and it's a bit like learning French. You need to go to France and immerse yourself in the language even before you feel ready. So it's very much a learn by doing. We have some pre-planned hands that are, designed to tease out different teachable moments, and and also cement different listening skills and body language skills as you go through. So we've not had anyone, completely throw their hands in the air and not been able to enter the sort of the tournament. That's the last third of the workshop.
And I'm given that I'm in the leadership training business myself, of course, I'm particularly interested in some of this as to how you're actually doing it, because it just sounds so fascinating. I mean, in the session, then, just talk me through how a typical session runs, because you've obviously got a mixture of teaching people to play, playing, and then bringing out the kind of lessons that you're going to bring from that. So how does that all work?
Absolutely. Well, the first sort of we break it into four sections, and the first one is a game called Traitors with Aces, and this is nothing to do with poker. It's a body language game of bluff that we've devised, where we deal people random card four. There's four aces and four non-aces mixed up face down, and people have to take a card. And if you have an ace, you are a traitor. You must lie. You must deny having an ace. And everyone else with a non-ace can tell the truth, and you're all around the table trying to discern who has something to hide, who is hiding the ace. And we talk about body language and tells and reading the room, stress responses, blink rate, and whether you're covering your card. And we get people to think about self-regulation and managing at the same time as observing, and then how worse you are at observing the other when you're trying to manage yourself. So there's a good chunk of our workshops that's really not poker. That's the first section. Then we get into some basic face-up hands, where we are teaching the structure of the game. We also give a video in advance so people can get familiar with some of the terminology and structure. And then we turn poker on its head, which is the third segment. And it's very interesting. We ask people not to play individually, but to play collaboratively, i.e., it's a communication challenge. You are successful if, through the medium of betting chips and folding cards, you can agree who at the table has the best hand, such that when the hand is complete, the person that won had the best hand. So this is a kind of, if you have something of value, you need to be able to assert yourself and get that heard. And this is where the interesting challenge comes. If you have kings, conversely, are you able to listen effectively and discern if someone else has aces? And what we see this exercise doing is, really, if you imagine in a meeting an alpha type with a good idea, asserting that rather dominantly in the progression of the conversation, can they pause and listen that, maybe some juniors have crucial creativity or innovative insights that they're missing out on? And it's a sort of negotiation. Poker is a conversation. I think I'm winning. No, I think I'm winning. So can you, negotiations break down when either someone at the table isn't able to assert their value, or secondly, someone asserts their value too highly and isn't listening, or people have incomplete information and keep calling every hand, i.e., keep asking for more information, and in doing so increase the cost of every negotiation and aren't able to make assertive decisions. And so that pertains really closely to raise, fold, or call. And so we sort of tease out those challenges. So if you've got aces and you're more meek, you need to be able to bet aggressively and not get bullied. And if you have kings, you need to be able to listen if someone else has aces. So that's a really interesting dynamic people are typically quite terrible at.
Mm.
So that's funny. And then the last kind of quarter is that competitive tournament where the rules, our guidelines go out the window. People can bluff if they wish. They can play aggressively. They can play in a disciplined way, and we play for the kind of trophies and chocolates and champagne and bragging rights. And people love that element. So the last section is a bit more poker fun, and you can put all of your learnings into practice. But we weave in lots of reflections around resilience and self-regulation. We also have an add-on, which is a psychometric test. We can go deeper into your poker personality profiling and how whether you show up as, like I said, as a jackal or a mouse, and how that plays into the rest of your wider team as well.
Yeah, nice. And how long does a typical workshop take then?
So 4 hours is our ideal. We've done it in much less. So lots of people ask for 3. I know kind of away days get busy, but 4 hours is our signature workshop. But we work with the client to make sure it sort of fits their outcomes and their needs. Some people want us to dial up the poker party. Others want to go a lot deeper into kind of negotiation skills or listening skills. And so we'll always work to make sure it kind of fits the needs and the timings and the budgets of the client.
Yeah, what an awesome concept. I congratulate you. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I mean, it takes me on as well, because I mean, leadership is the kind of central theme of this podcast. I mean, that's why I do it, really, to talk to people who are in leadership roles or growing into leadership roles or have been senior leaders themselves in different organizations. But you are working with people on a leadership training basis, as we've just been talking about. B, you've actually got a lot of leadership experience yourself from the work you've done and the different roles you've had, which you highlighted at the beginning. Just really interested in your sort of takeaways from all of that. Your not only your own style, but what you see in other people. What are the big things about leadership that come out for you very regularly?
I think one thing that's really surprised me, specifically from the Aces High workshops, has been how much the stereotypes played out. I've been a little bit disappointed with that gender mix. I really thought it wouldn't. I was backing women to be able to assert themselves. And I've seen in leadership styles repeatedly come out where women are asking me, what's the minimum bet? I don't want to take that much risk. I want to conserve my chips, even if they've got the best possible hand. That's a huge generalization. It's not every female that's entered my workshops, but it's played out a lot more commonly than I would have thought. Having said that, when women are able to listen, pick their moments, assert their value, they're winning. Quite often, beginner women are winning the tournaments because they're parking their ego, not out to win every single hand, but able to kind of dial it up when the moment demands it. So being that strategic chameleon that can step outside of a comfort zone and dial up a different side of themselves. So I think that's been really interesting for leadership. And there's just so many analogies around that. But I think a really big theme around what we're doing is that kind of empathy. People think it's bluff and bravado and find out it's empathy, observation, people following pattern recognition. And I say it's a game most commonly played by men, but absolutely made for women. So really want to kind of make that as inclusive as possible. And it plays out, if you look at the poker table as a proxy for the boardroom table, it's a space that's been male dominated, that historically maybe women haven't been as welcome at. So I see the game shifting of poker, but also in the workplace. So I think it is kind of a safe place to kind of play at, sort of leaning in and managing your table persona, how others perceive you. And when I go into a casino, I typically will give the impression that it's my first time there. I might play my first few hands very loosely, sacrificing a few chips deliberately, showing my hands, make out I'm just there with my boyfriend, all very kind of because those first impressions count. And it's exactly the same with executive presence. You can dial up a side to yourself that might not fake it till you make it a little bit, right? You can dial up a more assertive side, or you can, like me in the casino, kind of give the impression that I'm more novice than I am, and let people, those feed into those stereotypes. So it's quite interesting what you can play with about not just your confidence and strength, but how you're perceived by others.
No, it's fascinating. Stepping away from the gender piece just for a second, because one of the things I talk quite a lot about is it doesn't matter whether it's men or women. if you look at strong personalities and more extrovert, driving kind of personalities versus more introvert, thoughtful, reflective personalities. I mean, often, and I perceived it myself a lot in my leadership roles as well, where quite often you will get the best input from the person that's the quietest and most thoughtful, and whereas often you what you see, of course, is you'll get people jumping forward because they want to get an opinion on the table, they want to look good in front of the boss, blah blah blah. All those kind of things play out very typically. Do you see that in what you're doing as well?
Absolutely. So yeah, gender is a bit irrelevant. It is just the best idea. Someone at the table can have the best idea, but if they're not able to assert it, they're not getting heard. And so that whole exercise we do around having the best hand win relies on people being able to bet when they've got something unfold if they think they're losing. And so absolutely that plays out. And it's actually something I watch out for myself as a kind of alpha type myself. On all the personality profiles, I'm like the red alpha CEO, and it gets me in trouble, right? In
Doesn't
poker,
show.
in work. I know it does, doesn't it? I know. But that gets me in trouble, right? Because I can knee jerk a response. Maybe, certainly historically, listening has not been my best asset, I would say, and I do kind of tend to lean into conversations. What's helped me away from poker is meditations significantly. I mean, one of the biggest kind of leadership value things wasn't a leadership program at all, but I went on a 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat where there's no communication, no eye contact, no hand gestures, silent and in your own space, 10-day meditation. And that was probably the biggest like opportunity for self-reflection and growth and resilience, more than anything else I've done in my career or personal or professional development.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd survive that. I mean, I'm pretty talkative as
Well, it
well.
was gendered, so you had the men on one side of the meditation hall and the women on the other. I was very close to leaving, and it's very common that people do. I mean, I definitely nearly failed or cracked or whatever you want to call it. But the male side was dropping, like every day there'd be one or two less people, but all the women did stay intact in my sitting. But it's really tough. It was like 10 years of therapy in 10 days, so that's really intense.
Yeah, yeah, I can well imagine. Wow. I mean, I'm sure some people would find that thing, sort of thing quite easy, if they are just, they're really comfortable in their own space and just very thoughtful and don't want to talk much anyway. But for if you're a talker, that's got to be really hard. Definitely, that's.
I think it's hard, even if you're not a talker, because lots of things come up. Like the things that were being processed were like memories from my childhood, not necessarily capital T trauma, just sort of small things that have maybe been left unprocessed. I believe, the body keeps score. And so it was kind of like a big MOT for things that you don't take time in daily life to kind of properly process. And there's no escape. And so I mean, you find these micro things that aren't big in daily life suddenly become huge. Like the porridge was cold and I was obsessing over this cold porridge because you've got nowhere else to project your kind of frustrations and demons, if you like. So it was observing that with non-attachment, which is kind of the, I guess, Hindu Buddhist philosophy that was a part of it. But just, even from a non-spiritual standpoint, just observing your reactions as they arise and being able to kind of sit with them instead of reacting on them, which is great training for the poker table and the boardroom table too.
Yeah, oh, great. That sounds absolutely fascinating. Dropping back to leadership just for a sec. I mean, traits and sort of leadership behaviors. Personally, as much as anything, what do you hold dear? What do you think are the most important things for a leader to have? What have you worked on yourself over the various development roles you've had as you've got to where you are now?
It's really hard, isn't it? I do think that sometimes it's really challenging to change. I do think how we're born. I mean, if you look at 10-year-old me, you'll have seen the same attributes, right? And I've seen so many people go on courses for leadership and for change and then come out the other side the exact same. So I do think behavioral change is really challenging in one program and one course. I think making experiential makes it stickier. I do a lot of self-reflection, like self-helpy type books, just read Atomic Habits, things like that. If I had to pick one, because it's the one I need to work on the most myself, I think listening is most important, because a leader can lead from the front, but if you're not getting those ideas, that feedback, whether that's listening to clients, creating an MVP or minimum viable product and getting that early feedback, listening to your team, making sure that junior team members can feel heard, and upward management, if you're a leader in a kind of organization, you need to be able to kind of understand where you're at. And then within that, I would add on the ability to kind of evaluate and re-evaluate in the world of changing information, because I think we can go in with a viewpoint on this is a good project or this is a good hand. Something changes, you've got new information, and we're sort of emotionally wedded to our initial viewpoint, either because of pride or habit or knee jerk. And so being able to see where you are in the moment in light of that fresh information, so evaluating and re-evaluating on top of the listening skills.
Interesting. I mean, and listening as well. I mean, I often say to people, and I think it's particularly true for strong personalities, is you've got two ears and one mouth. You need to use them in proportion and in that order. Because I think there is a real risk that you talk first and then listen subsequently. And of course, the trouble is, if you're a strong leader, the moment you do that, that you've put your opinion out there, the team are going to go, well, why would I argue with that then? Because I know you're not going to want that. So you effectively spoiled your potential debate before you've even started it.
And you're missing out on that innovation. So there's the concept of the hippo in the room. I'm not sure if you've ever come across that
highest
acronym.
Paid
The highest paid person's opinion should speak last. So if the hippo speaks last, because then at least everyone can practice airing their thoughts, and you might pick up on something that you otherwise would have missed.
No, totally. It's a great acronym, that, and I love it. It's highly amusing. I mean, you mentioned 10-year-old you. What about 18-year-old you? If you were looking backwards, what would you be saying to yourself?
That's a good one. I don't regret any of my career. I've taken something from every aspect. I think at 21, going into the world of investment banking, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I think I was in it for the wrong reasons. I think I was motivated by money. Had a privileged upbringing, but at a certain point when I was 10, my parents separated. My dad lost his job, and we ran two households. Not a sob story. My brothers had been to boarding school. It just happened then that we didn't have any money. We couldn't take a family holiday, and I was on preschool meals. So quite a big shift from the kind of 0 to 10. And that really motivated me to want to have that financial resilience, to be independent. So I definitely went into banking thinking, with dollar signs in my eyes, thinking this was a way to line my pockets. And what I would warn 21-year-old me about is, look, do a career for the primary purpose of loving it or being good at it or being excited by it, and not the secondary purpose of it paying the bills or making money. Because if you do something that you really love, the money will follow one way or another. Maybe not investment banking salaries, but you'll be able to make a living because it'll be something you love. It'll be something you're good at. And I believe that with ACES High. I'm not in the world of investment banking. I'm not earning those salaries, but I found my kind of ikigai, which is this Japanese concept of what do you love? What are you good at? What do people need? And what will people pay for? And right in the middle for me is ACES High. I love poker. I'm good at facilitation and training. People need corporate offsites, and people will pay for like organized fun that lands real business value. And so I went into banking for the wrong reasons, learned a lot and loved various aspects of it. But I think if I'd been truer and more authentic to myself, I might have done something else.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? When you look at when you leave, whether it's when you leave school or whether you leave university. Sure, if you've gone to university, you've got a few more years under your belt. You've got a bit of a broader perspective, I guess. But if I look back at myself and relatively how, although I did a job for 34 years in the Air Force and I loved it, actually my worldview when I went into that was really narrow. When I reflect on it now, I mean, I didn't. I kind of set my sights on that's what I'm going to do. But did I look at other things and did I explore other avenues? Not really. But I totally share the point about enjoying what you do and loving what you do. For me, that's a fundamental thing that is absolutely one of the tenets that I've lived my life by. That you've got to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, find some way to change it, because it's just life's too short. You don't want to get to my age or older and then go, I wish I'd done something else. It's just not helpful at all.
Completely agree. Life is absolutely too short. You know, you've got to make it count.
Yeah, and it's not a rehearsal and all those other cliches. I highs and lows. I do talk a lot about highs and lows with people at various stages of their careers. I think because I think it's always really interesting to look at um, what they've experienced, and I think there's as much to be learnt from things that have gone wrong for people as there is the things that have gone really well for them. You've kind of already alluded to what would you do differently, which is the first question I tend to ask, because obviously from your investment banking point, you may would have reconsidered that. High points, and you can have more than one professional high points, but what are the things that really stand out for you?
I think it's absolute seeing Aces High grow. I started it thinking it would be me with a pack of poker chips, a pack of cards, sort of chancing it as an after work hustle for 500 quid here or there, and devised what I thought was a really good, you know, content session. But I didn't expect the kind of word of mouth, the caliber of the clients, the global tech companies, the leading financial institutions, the international law firms. That led to kind of coverage in CBS News, where they came and filmed an event and they broadcast us to a US audience of 16 million. Richard Branson then posted about us on his personal social media channels. So I got inquiries from Arkansas and Australia. We've been written up in the Financial Times, in Professional Wealth Management Today, and I think actually and BBC News. But I think this sort of being in the industry press and sort of getting that rigor around this is not just team building fun. We've done sort of the workshop and our signature workshop, but actually there's a place where we can really look at poker strategies for investment success, and shunting Aces High. We'll still do our signature workshop, but there's a layer above that, or the deeper, if you like, that goes into leveraging my investment banking background. Now, how are you separating emotion from decision making? What does loss aversion mean when you're not willing to kind of cut your losses and lock in a loss? How is outcome bias affecting your investment strategy? And working a bit deeper with investment professionals around those themes makes me feel like Aces High has got real credibility beyond just, you know, poker fun after work socials, which is really not where we're trying to be. So that credibility that's come, I think, with the press and exposure and just seeing it grow has been probably the high point.
I can imagine. I want some of your Kool-Aid. I mean, God, how do you get that kind of publicity? I mean, you could pay millions for advertising and not reach those kind of audiences. That's incredible. Well done,
I
you.
think it's particularly of interest because there's sort of a female lead teaching and playing poker, but then bringing that into a corporate environment, but it's also zero gambling. So there's a lot of kind of surprising elements to it. So yeah, I mean, the press has been insane. We've been in all of like the Sunday Mail and the Mirror, but then right up to Financial Times, Wealth Management Today. Like I said, Richard Branson, Simon Squibb, who's a kind of entrepreneurial younger Richard Branson type, if you like, has promised to host an event for his team. And we've got some exciting things to come in 2027 as well. So it really does feel like we're on the edge of something.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, good for you. I mean, I'll watch with great interest to see where that goes. Then,
Thank you.
just amazing. Sadly, though, I'm sure there's been a low point or two along the way. What are any of those?
For my whole career, I mean, it was probably, I mean, probably on the trading floor at certain elements. I passed out on the trading floor 3 times from exhaustion. 2 of those I kind of got up and went back to work. So I really did have those investment banking stripes. And I think in 2003, as I entered that world, there was still a culture of, you know, being the junior on the desk and earning your place and feeling like that was kind of part of the initiation. And I didn't have the kind of experience or wherewithal or confidence to kind of approach that differently. And I made a lot of sacrifices that actually ultimately impacted my health. And so I think that low point would have been really getting the balance wrong. Now I'm still hardworking and entrepreneurial and put in the hours today, but that's been kind of something I've learned and taken away in terms of it's not work-life balance, it's work-life integration, but not doing it at such an extreme. Now, I think hopefully times change. I don't know quite what it's like today, but I definitely got that balance wrong.
Yeah, and learned a lot from it by the sounds of it, and that's really interesting reflection in terms of putting that across to other people as well. Because I mean, you've mentioned a couple of times kind of gender behaviors and bits. I'm intrigued on your reflections just before we move on to something else. That you are you're in investment banking as a woman, which I guess as again a pretty male dominated profession. You're now doing the poker thing, which you've already talked about, is very male dominated in terms of actual, particularly professional poker playing, I guess. So you've touched on a bit of disappointment about some of the women you see coming into your workshops with Aces High, but I'm interested as to it feels to me that you were probably been underestimated your entire life in both those worlds. I mean, you talked about going into casinos and basically downplaying it, and then fleecing them and winning tournaments and things. Uh, I mean, it's Queen's Gambit writ large, isn't it? With some of this, which I guess you probably watched. I mean, is that fair? Just tell me what your thoughts are.
I don't know. I mean, I talk a lot about kind of the female angle because I think it is interesting and important as a society. For me personally, I argue that more times than not, I've been able to use that to my advantage, and that's not really a credit to me. It's to say like I tick every privilege box going except being male. Okay, so grew up comfortable for most of it, and then I'm white, and then I've been to Cambridge, and then I had access to investment banking, so I definitely don't want to play the the gender pay gap. That's not something that I feel like materially affected by. Having said that, as any women of my generation will have had the comments, go make the tea and this and that. So there was moments of it where I was overlooked, I'm sure, but I don't want that to be kind of the takeaway or the chart. I don't think it's. I think actually I was just timed it right where there was sort of a push towards getting more women to sit at the table, whatever that table was, and with the other kind of background and being quite alpha and having the privilege that I have, I've been able to kind of capitalize on that. I mean, just as one example, when I was pre-university, I did a 2-week internship at Goldman Sachs where they went to the top 15 girls' schools in the country. They took the top 2 applicants from each school. And age 18, I was put up in a hotel in Fleet Street and taken to the Ivy and given leather handbags by Goldman Sachs. Not even, it was a great marketing ploy because we didn't add any value whatsoever, but we all went off to the top universities and told everyone about it. So then everyone wanted to work for Goldman Sachs. So that's just one example of where there was a pro-women opportunity that I was able to apply for and secure that benefited me. And then by the time I was applying for the internships, at university in my second year, I had already inverted commas work experience at Goldman Sachs. I mean, it was meaningless, but it still was something that other people didn't have, and I got half a day on fixed income and half a day on FX, and you got sort of rotated around these various speeches and presentations, and so that's one way where I've been able to use it to my advantage. So I don't think that is true for everyone else, but I wouldn't want to over egg the kind of poor me female thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I wasn't wishing to put it across like that. I just think
No.
it's fascinating because you are, I mean, you leap out of the screen at me as a very, very confident, strong personality. So I can completely see how that will be quite daunting, actually, for some of my male colleagues that I've worked with in the past, where they'll be going, "Oh my God, how do we deal with you?" Have you ever found that, or has it not been an issue?
Um, I think I can dial up different sides of myself, so I can be strong or gentle, but definitely, I don't like getting feedback that I'm aggressive or overconfident. And I think as a younger female, you can be told that because people the stereotype of women to be and behave a certain way. But yeah, I don't maybe I'm not self-aware enough, but I think I have been comfortable with myself in most spaces and been able to navigate things that maybe other women wouldn't feel or other minorities might feel less comfortable doing so. So I don't quite know where that's come from, but except going back to the beginning and having 2 older brothers and really wanting to kind of be able to keep up with them.
No, I mean, I'm just hugely impressed. I think your whole persona makes and I can completely see in terms of running workshops to do the sort of stuff you're doing with Aces High, how that would be so commanding as a presence because you've just got that presence. I mean, more power to you. It's fantastic. It's really really good to see. So and I
Thank
think
you.
often that is perhaps it's the stereotypes that play, but there are plenty of men who are exactly the same. They just don't put themselves over as strongly as that, and it makes they've got really
Mm.
compelling argument, but they don't manage to get it across the table, and that's a
Mm.
shame all the time. I'm amused by your
Yeah.
Goldman story. Actually, years ago, I went. I can't even remember why we did it. We were going and doing a kind of career education thing when I was on a military course, and one of the places we went to was Goldman, and there were various. It was when I was at Staff College. They were offering various different opportunities, and one of my buddies on the course said, "Let's go to Goldman. They'll do the best lunch," and he was right. It was a fantastic lunch. I mean, this is 30 years ago, and they spent they clearly rolled out their ex-military talent in front of us to talk to us about what Goldman did. But it was very apparent they actually didn't really want us. They wanted the people that worked for us, to come in because the kind of military one of the things the military does very very well is it trains people very well and it gives them lots of opportunities very early on to do particularly leadership type stuff. So it makes them independent, it makes them quick thinkers, makes them very resilient, adaptable, agile, all those kind of words. And so actually you can see completely why those kind of skills would be really really useful in that environment. But we were all sitting there going, how do we get your job? And, right up to the point that actually we then had lunch with one of the guys who was a partner in the firm, and I have to say he did look like he'd been through the grinder. It clearly had been a bit of a tough paper round for sure. So no, that kind of persuaded us.
The grass is always greener, isn't it? And then I think sometimes reality is that like it's pretty cutthroat and brutal, and you have to make a lot of sacrifices and fair play because that's a brilliant lifestyle if you can make it work and if that's truly rewarding and you're doing it for the primary purpose, not the secondary reason. Otherwise, for me, I started to feel like a square peg in a round hole. So.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you, 100%. I mean, that's a good segue actually, because you've come from a very busy world. You're still running your own business, so you're a founder. So all the stuff that goes with that, where I guess you are totally invested personally in the business in terms of making it succeed and all the rest of it. What do you do to kind of de-stress, relax, and chill?
I should say go to the casino and play some poker, but try and steer away from that these days. I'm actually touching on that kind of meditation retreat previously. I'm quite into my holistic well-being, so a lot of yoga, meditation, some bit of cold swimming here and there. I wish I did it every day, or I could say I did. It's a practice, right? To meditation practice. So something that I work at, but just to reflect and kind of process, whether that's a bit of journaling or a bit of meditation, I find really useful. And then me and my husband and son have a non-negotiable Friday night movie night where we get a takeaway and just veg out in front of the screen. And so that's a sort of family night that we do try not to miss as well. So the usual stuff, nothing too out there. I'm the wrong side of 40 now, so feeling a little bit happier, having kind of calmer weekends. And what's interesting about Aces High is that all of the events are Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, it seems, right? So we are not doing stag nights, hen nights, 50th birthdays typically. We are sort of working with corporate teams, and so that keeps it nicely Monday to Friday. Although I do have to sacrifice quite a few evenings, but we make it work, and I enjoy those as well. So I think when you do a job you love, you never work another day, they say. So that feels true for me.
And I think that's very true. And I think the other thing is in terms of the time you work. I mean, you mentioned evenings. One of the things I find running my own business these days is, yeah, it feels like I'm constantly on the business in terms of actually doing stuff to try and improve it and fill the pipeline and all those sorts of things. But you are in control of what you do, and you can choose
Mm.
when you have time off and choose what you're going to do and how you're going to manage that. Whereas obviously, if you're working employed by somebody, then it's very different, and I love that. I wouldn't swap that back for the world. And my wife keeps saying, "Oh, you should go back and get a proper job," and I'm going,
I think I struggle to get a proper job now and be managed by someone and have performance reviews. I think I would. I've been too long in the kind of running your own business space, but I'm still learning about Aces High, and what I'm seeing is sort of seasonal fluctuations. So obviously August is a very quiet time, so that gives space for proper family vacations. Again, no one's organising corporate offsites in half terms or at Christmas, so it actually fits really nicely with the family life in that sense. And I have a very involved husband who's, I would argue, like the primary parent in terms of hours spent and mental load carried. So I think, that shouldn't go unmentioned, because it's very different when I speak to other female founders or friends of mine that are juggling family commitments and raising children. And for one reason or another, oftentimes, the gender balance isn't quite there yet. And I have to say that's not the case in my relationship. So yeah, that's really made a difference in being able to unlock and supercharge some of the work with Aces High.
Yeah, nice. That's got to be super helpful. I totally appreciate that. Um, Different tack. I always try and tap into the kind of broader experience of the guests I have on the show, because I think there's a world of advice that's available to people out there, and you're clearly very entrepreneurial, as you've mentioned, from your early days doing what getting to where you are now. You're also actually working, as you've mentioned, with lots of corporates, seeing a lot of different angles in terms of the challenges they're facing, et cetera, et cetera. What do you, more broadly, not on the personality side, but in terms of the world of work now, big opportunities, big challenges, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are the kind of reflections you've got from that?
I mean, it feels so obvious now because it's on everyone's lips, but I just don't think I can answer this question without mentioning AI. It feels like the biggest opportunity and the biggest challenge and the biggest risk all rolled into one. Every conversation I'm having with corporate is, we were having this discussion about AI and the negotiation went this way or that way. I mean, I think it's so huge, and the scale and pace at which it's advancing means that no one's really an expert, or few people are, because it's exponential. And so we don't know what we don't know, and it feels like a bit of a race to kind of, from the tech companies, right, and without always the checks and balances of what we're creating. And I don't think everyone's really, except right at the top, really understanding quite what is unfolding. So I think as someone, I'm 44, I feel just at a micro level, there's a high risk of being left behind with this stuff if you're not adapting and embracing and innovating with it. So how can I use it to kind of automate processes and supercharge, whether that's client outreach or CRM or program design? Like, it would be daft not to. And I think it is a real challenge for corporates. Like, what can you enter into that is now going to become public property? How are you letting your employees interact with AI in terms of like preparing a client brief, and somehow secure information's got into the AI? What does that even mean? It's just such a minefield, and it's so new and it's so quick that I feel very few people are going to be fully prepared for that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's, a couple of add-ons from my side on that. I think there are, on an individual level, there are too many leaders, potentially, who are particularly more older than you, but not yet retired, who are sort of sitting there thinking, do you know what? I could probably wait this out. I don't really need to get too engaged with it, because the youngsters in the organization will do that. And I think that's a strategic mistake. I think if you're a leader, you've got to lead, you've got to be decisive, you've got to understand it. At the very least, you've got to get involved with it and play with it, and have a kind of clear understanding of what the opportunities are, where the challenge points are, what the risks are. As you alluded to, client information is a classic, isn't it? And there've been a few of those kind of howlers already, where things are out there that there shouldn't be, or reports that have been produced and the content hasn't been properly quality controlled, and so on and so forth, by different organizations. And I think that's, on one level, that's a problem. I think the other one that I see, when you look at the challenge versus opportunity piece, and particularly for younger people entering the workforce, I think there is an institutional dishonesty in some organizations who are busy saying, oh, this is a huge opportunity. And the reality is, you've got to look at what they're going to do. So if it's a bottom line issue, isn't it? Ultimately, I mean, if they can save money on the bottom line by reducing headcount, because they can do this by automating it, they're going to do that. And that generates a downstream challenge that, again, is being thought about. But is it being thought about enough? Question, not sure yet. How do you actually build experience in the senior end of your workforce if the junior jobs have all been automated? Because at the end of the day, I mean, you've mentioned it. You lean back on your investment banking, history and what you've done to do what you do now. If that suddenly is not there because you actually didn't do it, you didn't do that stuff, or you did it in a very different way. It'll be an interesting challenge. I think the next 10 years is going to be fascinating in that regard because, as you say, the pace of it. I mean, 10 years time, it's hard to imagine where AI will have gone for sure.
Yeah, I think in the next 6 months it will have advanced more than it has in the past 10 years. That's
Yeah,
kind of the
I
milestone,
completely agree.
yardstick people are saying. I don't know. I'm not really not the expert on this, but I know it's sort of very intimidating, and we don't know what we don't know. So it will be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, talking of 10 years, then, where do you see Aces High in 10 years? What's your desired trajectory?
We've got some really exciting development things coming up. So when I talk about our signature workshop for offsites and away days, that's really been product one, region one in kind of delivering in London. Where we're layering on now is some wearable tech so that we can monitor in real time people's heart rates and stress response and have that data. And then we're tracking the playing cards and the chips using QR codes on the back of each individual playing card to identify it and on the chips so we can track every single action, every bet, every fold, every movement of the cards or the chips, and triangulate that data with your psychometric profile on attitude to risk, conflict, and decision making. And this is taking us away from team building fun, well, which we'll still deliver, but as a follow on, quite an in depth insight into kind of executive leadership at an individual level and in a team context where you can understand risk profiles, attitude to conflict, how you're making decisions under pressure by looking at your stress response in real time with your decision making at the poker table, under reflection of like what you've said your poker personality is and how that interrelates to others, which supercharges it to quite a powerful kind of executive leadership training at a completely different level. And so we have got some clients that are doing 6 sessions with us, for example, and that's not sitting and playing poker for 3 hours a time. That is bidding exercises, bet sizing, looking at kind of investment conviction and how that plays out amongst some of the behavioural insights that we're able to offer. So I think that's where the 10 years will take us, hopefully international. Might have some investment on the horizon to help us scale. And so lots of exciting things coming this way with our product and with our regions.
Yeah, awesome. I'm just hugely enthused by the concept generally, and I'll put your basic links in the show notes for this. But how do people get hold of you if they're interested in doing anything with you?
Thank you. Yes, you can find us at aceshighLondon.com and Instagram at Aces High London. My name is Jo Living. You can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, and Aces High London is also on LinkedIn. So Instagram and LinkedIn and website, and I'm very contactable. So would love to hear from anyone interested to learn more or potentially bring this into their workplace.
Yeah, no, well, I really hope you get some more follow up from that as well. There's two questions I
Brilliant.
always ask though, Jo, before I let you off the hook. The first one is the most memorable event of your professional life so far.
Oh, that's a tricky one. I'm defaulting to more recent occurrences. Getting into the FT, having Richard Branson post about us, they all stand out. I've got an exciting media moment coming up in 2027 that's it's confidential at the moment. Even just delivering a 9-table poker event at a high-end London hotel for a corporate client and seeing my team stand there, which is not just me, but we've trained up brilliant corporate facilitators that know and enthusiastic about poker, and seeing 72 people at once go through our workshop, and sort of the feedback we're getting in real time and how much people love it and have these aha moments. I mean, nothing beats getting in front of clients and having that real time feedback. So that's really the standout moments for me.
Yeah, nice. How many people actually didn't ask? How many people have you got in the team?
So I'm a team of one, and I work with fractional 0 hours kind of people. So we have professional poker dealers, that's their career, and we work with them by the session or by the hour. And then we have corporate facilitators in a similar way, where they'll have their own careers and jobs and then come and facilitate. And they're trained in the Aces High methodology. And so they will work at the table, and sometimes I'm facilitating centrally with these brilliant partners at the poker table as well. So extended team of about 15. and growing regionally. So trying to get our first delivery partners in New York, as mentioned. We've delivered in Edinburgh, London, Birmingham, Cambridge, Chelmsford. So yeah, really starting to get some geographical spread now as well. I've had inquiries from Europe and, looking at further afield. So it's
Yeah,
going to be fun.
good stuff. I mean, I recognize that associate model very well. That's exactly what I do. I mean, interestingly, and it's a digression here completely, but I mean, I do think this is an area where, at the UK point, but I'm sure it applies to other countries as well. The It's not been made easy for small organizations to employ people. And I think that is a real
Mm.
challenge. And I don't think it's necessarily helpful for back to that workforce of the future kind of thing. I mean, I for example, would have almost an allergic reaction to employing people in my leadership business as employees because of all the stuff that comes with it. The mandatory pension bit, the employee rights that people now have that the government has layered on top of small businesses that I think make life really hard. And I just don't think that's helpful or useful for the workforce for the future.
It does. There's some new innovations, some tech innovations working around that. There's an organization called Remote where they sort of step in as the kind of intermediary. So I have, in my previous tech startup, hired someone in Spain that was brilliant and fantastic, and you're able to secure a slightly different salary to the one in London, but still pay them really well. And they had different maternity rights and different things, but the companies with this tech solution are stepping in as the intermediary. So you're still fulfilling all of your obligations, but cutting out all of the logistics and kind of admin around that. So it's interesting to see some people trying to tackle that problem, because I think it's a real one, but it's sort of in this more globalized world we're getting, particularly in sort of tech and startups. I think that's sort of missing a trick, and freelancers as well. But if you really want to hire, there's solutions for that now. But historically, that's been next to impossible.
No, that's great. I mean, it makes absolute sense. I hadn't heard of that organization, but I think the ability, not least to do this kind of thing. I mean, it even whatever. Certainly, 10 years ago, no one would have thought you could actually work like this. So the fact that more and more people are doing much more stuff totally remotely, never going into the office, etc. It's unsurprising, isn't it? Last question is: what's the most difficult question you've ever been asked?
Oh my gosh. Will you marry me? No, that was an easy one. I could answer that very quickly. No, the most difficult question I've been asked, tricky. Outside of Aces High, I think having those investor conversations where you're trying to defend and present the opportunity of your startup for potential investment, and getting that interrogation can feel, really intense. And we were successful in raising venture capital investment for my previous tech startup, but interestingly, only 2% of venture capital money goes to all female founded teams, which is not just a reflection of VCs. It's also potentially female founders not coming forward, but it does make for a difficult landscape. And then some of the questions we were asked by the sort of VCs were a little bit more, you know, more defensive. So what makes you think this could be big, as opposed to a how big could this be kind of phrasing? And there's some studies have shown that how people interrogate female founders versus male founders is actually quite different. And so some of the questions I had around how are you going to balance having a young child and this startup, how does being a mother going to, how are you managing your work-life balance, and things that I don't want to get defensive about, and you want to answer honestly with your best foot forward, but in the back of your mind you're thinking, would you be asking this to a man?
That was the thought exactly in my head. I don't imagine they would be. I mean that, and
Yeah.
particularly in today's world, it's disappointing, isn't it, when you get that kind of stuff? Because I think, I mean, on the one hand, you don't want to tiptoe around it on eggshells around this stuff, and if it's genuinely preying on your mind, you should ask it. But actually, that's just not right in today's world, is it?
Yes, but the reality is that gender balances at home aren't yet even in the majority of households, and so as an investor, I can definitely empathise that that's a sort of fair question, and there's so many steps to get to asking that question, right? It's not just the mindset of the investor to blame. It's not just that it's not even at home. There's just so many layers. So, but it does make it quite difficult where you're having to kind of defend and validate your kind of existence as a female founder. But having said that, we found investors that were really aligned with our mission, and we were successful in closing VC money and taking that kind of through the whole journey of kind of startup landscape. So I learned a lot with that one, and I think it's probably been massively helpful in making Aces High the success it's been in. I mean, we only established in January 2025, so we're less than 18 months old. Hit 6 figures of revenue in year 1. We're on a trajectory beyond that for year 2. So it's just been a whirlwind with the press I mentioned and the kind of caliber of clients we've reached. So all of that has fed into this today. So as I said at the beginning, and I work with younger aspiring entrepreneurs at Anglo-Ruskin University, I think you need a bit of grey hair and a few failures under your belt. And Aces High wouldn't be the success it is today if I'd done it when I was 21, right? So go out into the world of work, see how to get stuff done, what works, what doesn't. And then, with your startups, I've always had those kind of startup ideas, and some I haven't mentioned were complete failures and never got off the ground. So I think that doesn't get shared as much as it probably should either.
Yeah, no, great points. Look, I mean, so many great points across what's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. And as I say, I'm really taken with the concept that you've got. I think I wish you the absolute best for it. I think it's fantastic. Anything that can turn around and gamify this, as you say, and bring it to a world where it makes it more memorable and all those sort of things. That's got to be good, isn't it? That's fantastic. Well done, Joe. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate your time, and very best of luck to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Not at all. Thanks a lot. I really hope you've enjoyed this amazing episode with Jo Living. I really did enjoy talking to her. I thought it was a fantastic conversation. I'm still, frankly, blown away by the concept, and I'm really hoping she has tremendous success with it, because I think it's just such a great idea and a really great tool. And it sounds like she's doing tremendously well. So let's watch this space, because I think there's plenty more that we're going to be seeing about her in the future. If you've enjoyed it, then please share it, please forward it, please like it, comment on it, make sure you've subscribed, followed, whatever it is, depending on the platform you're using, all that kind of normal stuff, so that it helps the algorithms to look at the podcast and boost it. That's really helpful for me. And it just gets more visibility and gets more people listening, and that's what we want as well with this. If you really like it and you really get value from it and you're finding this useful, then please do think about the financial support for the podcast. It doesn't cost you very much money, but it's going to make a very big difference to me. You just need to go to the support the show link in the podcast platform that you're viewing or listening to this on, and you'll find a route there to patreon.com, to my site on Patreon, which is the Leading for Life site. And there you can sign up as either a supporter, a champion, or a patron of the show. And as I say, it's basically a cup of coffee a month. If you're going for the high end, maybe it's a cup of coffee and a sticky bun a month. But my goodness, it's going to make a big difference to me. So I would really, really appreciate it if you do that. Thank you very much indeed for listening either way, though, or watching, whichever you're doing. And I'll be back very soon with another great episode. Take care. Bye-bye.